Where people find the strength to fight back in these conditions, I don't know. I can't imagine what it's like to live in a room the size of a bathroom for a week, a month, a year, let alone 30 years. We're about to hear the voice of a man who not only has survived in those conditions, but has fought back against those conditions, has written books in those conditions, has been a leader of our movement from his bathroom-sized death row prison cell and won freedom from that cell recently, Mumia Abu-Jamal. It's our honor that he took time out to record this message for this panel at this conference. Josh.
The state as murderers. I greet you all at no justice, no peace. Families wounded by police violence and wounded again by the system as they ignore, minimize, or dismiss your pain and loss. My brothers and sisters, men, women, and children of the MOVE organization suffered mass murder by bombing and shooting and burning on May 13th, 1985. None of the cops who waged this campaign of massacre spent a day or even an hour in jail, while the lone adult survivor, Ramona Africa, spent 11 years in prison for surviving. No justice, no peace. For people who have been beaten, blackjacked, or pummeled by police, or who have had their loved ones murdered by police, you emerge transformed, for you have new knowledge that no one prepared you for. No one taught you about this in school, nor in church. Your world has changed, yet you are often alone in your pain and torment, until you organize, until you unite with others like you, until you join the confraternity of pain and become a community of resistance to the state repression you all have suffered. For when you come together, you go beyond pain to power, for only power can begin to transform this horrendous condition, and only unity can build power. Let us begin by speaking truth to power, as did our ancestors like Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. Let us call a thing by its true name. I noticed when I read of this event that it was called Families of Police Brutality Victims Speak Out. Now, I know a little something about police brutality. For when I was a teenager, just turned 15, I was part of a protest in Philadelphia against George Wallace, the racist Alabama governor running for president in 1968. When we left the protest, we were attacked by police and beaten bloody. That's police brutality. But the loved ones in your family, your sons, your brothers, they didn't face brutality. They faced police terrorism, state terrorism, killed, slaughtered, murdered, like Ramarley Graham, in his own home by wild beasts in blue on the public payroll. Call it by its name. Please, repeat after me. Police terrorism. To call it brutality is to make it sound nicer. It's a media word. It's a politician's word. But it's not your word. Speak your truth, not theirs. It's police terrorism. Nothing more, nothing less. And what they do in black and Latino communities is just like colonial armies in Indian or Native communities. They attack, they assault, they exploit, they terrorize. Let us speak the truth, for truth can inspire change. And only you, joined with others, can bring change to this horrendous state of affairs. Don't let politicians muzzle you. Don't let media misrepresent you. Don't let preachers misdirect you. You know what you know. Demand true change, not just black and brown faces in high places. Demand treatment of respect deserved by all people. Demand an end to police state terrorism and unite to build a movement to make it happen. For only a movement can change public policy and social relations. And make no mistake, what happened to all of your loved ones is public policy. It's what the police are trained and paid to do, to keep the niggers and the spicks under control. That's state terrorism, and this is truth. Only an engaged, energized movement can make change. So build the movement. Become the movement. On the move, long live John Africa. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu Jamal.
They say death row. They say death row. They say death row. Thank you. We don't have many victories in this movement. We often suffer a lot of pain and a lot of defeat. In 2007, we scored a victory when the death sentence hanging over the head of Kenneth Foster was commuted. We're very pleased that we have here Jack Bryson to read a poem written by Kenneth Foster. Jack is an activist and an anti-racist organizer in Oakland. His sons were on the platform with Oscar Grant when the BART police murdered him in cold blood. Please welcome Jack Bryson.
Man, that's a tough voice to follow on me. That got me nervous. But this is a poem by Kenneth Foster. It's called Call for the Cause. One thing I like to say, I know I'm on a time limit, but I met Kenneth Foster's grandfather 2 years ago, and he's I hope he doesn't get upset, but he's a very older man. And but age didn't stop him from fighting for justice for his son. And he inspired me every time I see him in the summer or at the campaign to end the death penalty. And he's like in the 70s, but the man moves and he talks and he still fights for his sons. So if a man at that age can continue to fight, we should all be waking up by that, and we should all be fighting just as hard. So, like I said, the poem is called, I forgot my glasses. It's called Call for the Cause by Kenneth Foster. Controlled courts continue to convict my comrades. Colored folks, black, brown, tan, light, all heading towards crimson. Chains and concrete got us all curl-tailed. Step on a crack and break your mama's back. Better yet, give her a $50 pack and a watch SOS pads turn into magic carpets. Continuously, I'm cringing, trying to come up with a conversation of how we can become more conscious. Congress said, screw 'em, pass the coffee. I'm steadily confused from watching the Constitution contradict itself. Everything is backwards. Prisoners are politicians and congressmen are criminals. It's democracy of the century. Far from the concepts, civil rights. Don't make me chuckle. Our silver leaders are like cavemen, actually more like computerized than compassionate, more crazy than Christian. Christ would have choked on this silence of a drink. If he dined with this commander-in-chief, listening to this convincing chumps, contortions of peace. We need to change these conditions, concentration camps, and etc. You'll also complain. It turns my stomach. Click up, clap down, grab some combat boots, crack a government crook on the head. Theory without practice. It is incomplete as practice without theory. I'm ready to give these clowns the final coup de grace. Thank you. By Kenny Foster.
I'd now like to read a statement of solidarity from the organizing committee of this conference for Charles Willite. The Organizing Committee of Socialism 2012 stands in solidarity with the Justice for Charles campaign in Springfield, Massachusetts. Charles Willite is serving a life sentence without parole for first-degree murder, a crime he didn't commit. His family, friends, and community activists from all over Western Massachusetts have been organizing to free Charles. Unfortunately, Charles's family members were unable to be with us today. We, the organizers of Socialism 2012, also fight for Charles's freedom. The presiding judge in Charles's case has just recently granted Charles a new trial. The Justice for Charles campaign is asking that supporters of truth and justice everywhere call on the Hampton County District Attorney's Office to drop the charges against Charles and set him free. From Chicago, Illinois to Springfield, Massachusetts, we must all raise our voices and demand, free Charles Willite now. I'd now like to introduce Erica Gordon-Taylor. She's a cousin of Emmett Till and the adopted granddaughter of Mamie Mabley, Emmett Till's mother. Sorry, Mamie Mobley. Mamie. Without further ado, or blunders.
Thank you. Your applause has eased my nerves. First, I want to say good evening to everyone and thank Occupy Chicago for inviting me out to be a part of tonight's panel discussion. It is a privilege to be amongst you all on this evening. I am a cousin to Emmett Till. I'm also one of the heirs to the estate of Mamie Till Mobley. I'm the founding director of the Mamie Till Mobley Memorial Foundation, which is also inclusive of the Emmett Till Players that were established in 1978 by Miss Mobley herself. Know that my voice echoes the voice of Mamie's. As a child, I grew up in the home surrounded by Emmett's grandmother, Alma Spearman, his stepfather, Jeannie Mobley, and Mamie. Growing up surrounded by such strength, courage, and commitment instilled the fire within me that is yet fueled today amidst the new Jim Crow. Just a brief history about Emmett Till. How many know the story? Do I need to really go over the story? We all know that he was a 14-year-old black boy from Chicago that traveled to Mississippi. Very reluctantly so, his mother allowed him to go. He begged her to go, as a matter of fact. Little did she know that when she waved farewell to him from that train platform, that was the last time she would ever see her son alive again. She attempted to prepare him for the culture-shocking experience he was about to be confronted with. She tried to educate him. She was a very small in stature woman, but very powerful. And she was very proper. I remember her telling the story. Now, Emmett, she told me this. Now, my mother was around. My mother is here this evening, Ollie Gordon. She grew up in the home with Emmett. I listened to the stories. My mom heard her cries. She lived in the basement apartment below her. She heard her cries as the calls came in that Emmett's body was found, as a matter of fact. But she tried to teach Emmett. She said, now, Emmett, when you go to Mississippi and you see a white man walking down the sidewalk, you step into the street and you give him the sidewalk. She said, you say yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. But Emmett, being a rambunctious 14-year-old boy, he wanted to impress his cousins down in Mississippi, and they went to the local grocery store where Carolyn Bryant worked. She was 21 at the time. And he whistled at her. He did a wolf whistle. I can't do a wolf whistle. Can anybody do a wolf whistle for me? All right. He whistled as he was leaving the store. And when Roy Bryant, Carolyn's husband, had heard that this little nigger boy that stuttered had whistled at his wife, he decided that he and his brother-in-law, J.W. Milam, were going to just go and get that little boy from Chicago that talked funny and remove him out of the bed in the middle of the night at gunpoint with flashlights in a house full of children. He threatened Mose Wright. He said, we'll kill everyone in this house if you don't tell us which one of these are the nigger that talk funny from Chicago. He took Emmett from his bed that night, and that was the last time he was ever seen alive from our family. On September 19th, the kidnapping and murder trial began. It lasted for 5 days, an all-white, all-male jury, and it took about an hour to deliberate. And they said it only took an hour because they were thirsty and they needed to take a soda break. And then in January of 1956, Look magazine published the confessions of J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant, and the Look article entitled, "The Shocking Story of a Proved Killing in Mississippi." Both Bryant and Milam detailed how they beat Emmett with a gun, shot him in his head, tied barbed wire around his neck that was connected to a gin fan, and threw his body in the Tallahatchie River. They don't even tell half of it. You know there was much more done to Emmett. They were paid a reported $4,000 for their participation in that article. They were protected by a law, double jeopardy. Once acquitted, a defendant may not be retried for the same offense. Emmett wasn't the only victim of racism resulting in lynchings in the South during that time, but it was Mamie's actions and brave decision to have an open casket funeral and exposing it to the world that made the difference. She said, and I quote, "Leave the casket open. I want the world to see what they did to my boy." When Black America saw what Emmett looked like and what was done to him, they were outraged. The arousal of their consciences is what sparked the civil rights movement. Black America became angry. They were fed up with discrimination, and they wanted the same rights and privileges as whites. There needs to be a new mood shift in America today. What are we going to do about it? All the violence happening with our children is becoming an excuse for police to profile them even more. Acclaimed civil rights lawyer and scholar Michelle Alexander stated in a recent speech in New York, "There is no such thing as Black boyhood in American culture, and Black boys' imaginary manhood is being used as an excuse to bully and brutalize them." Trayvon Martin wasn't the first, the only, nor the last victim of racial profiling. The circumstances surrounding his murder, once again, were exposed. The injustices of the Stand Your Ground law in Florida was exposed to the world. It shed more light to the unjust killings of our youth around America as well, especially here in Chicago. Citizens all over the country took a stand for Trayvon, including our young people. Our children expressed emotion and got involved in the masses, demonstrating how tired they were of being victimized. It was a reality check for them, and they realized they are targets for police and other races hidden within society. The value of our children is diminishing daily, as demonstrated through racial profiling and violence, especially, again, gun violence in the city of Chicago. Dick Gregory stated, "Animals have more rights in America than Black people because there are restrictions on when and how you can kill them. But it's always open season on us. It's open season on our children." 57 years after the murder of Emmett, who would think that we would find ourselves once again confronted with the never-healing sore of injustice? The 58th year is coming up next in the month of August. For practice of racial profiling has been in our existence for generations, and many souls are being plucked from the garden of life, prematurely due to this immoral practice. Racism is ugly. Mamie maintained that the image of her son was the image of what racism would look like. And if you don't believe me, I brought a picture to show you. You can look at it afterwards. There's a picture of what she said racism looked like. That was Emmett after he had been murdered. And that's after A.A. Rayner fixed him up, and she was so pleased with what he had done. Yes, racism yet exists today, 57 years later after Emmett's death, especially through police brutality. Police officers all over the country, they're the new Ku Klux Klan. They patrol our communities and treat us like criminals. We yet see it reflected through the images of victims such as Rekia Boyd, Stephon Watts, also killed in his home, James Rivera, Alan Blueford, Howard Morgan, Ricky Bradley, Ramarley Graham, Darren Hanna, Amadou Diallo, Sean Bell, and Trayvon Martin, amongst hundreds of others across the country. We mustn't forget them. They're the victims of this war. They are the catalyst for the new civil rights movement. Our children are the catalyst for the new civil rights movement. Yes, racism yet exists. The most dangerous thing is that it's more covert now than in the 50s. We must redirect this prejudice into power. Let's promote our young people and encourage them to stand for their principles. If you oppose the past Jim Crow laws, then you should oppose the new Jim Crow laws. The new Jim Crow laws are strategically established today to enforce control, similar to that in the 50s when my cousin Emmett Till was murdered. This control is in the form of programs like Stop and Frisk in New York, and laws such as the Stand Your Ground law in Florida. When does the healing begin? It must be now, even if it is almost 57 years late. Refuse to resist. Also take time to honor the legacy of those that sacrificed themselves for us. We have digressed since Dr. King and various other freedom fighters sacrificed their lives for our civil liberties. Dr. King was a drum major for justice. We need more drum majors for justice. And we must not forget the intrepid decision made by Mamie Till Mobley, the godmother of the civil rights movement, the nucleus, the often overlooked and under-talked about warrior who continued the struggle for civil rights and war against human wrongs. She turned her tragedy into triumph. One of her greatest legacies are the Emmett Till Players, which I mentioned earlier. We were a touring troupe of youth that traveled the country with her, reciting excerpts from Dr. Martin Luther King. Wherever she went and spoke, she took one and they spoke on her behalf. I have an Emmett Till player here with me today from the new generation who is going to close me out. She's going to do Dr. King's desired eulogy to remind us the purpose of a drum major. The time has come to evaluate our humanity, to shift the paradigm of our family's tragedies to something more positive. We must never lose sight of what mankind can accomplish together in solidarity. Mamie Till Mobley fought for justice for her son until her death, and as a family, we yet fight to continue the legacy of our inheritance and know that we have never received justice for what happened to Emmett. I stand here in solidarity with you this evening, to fight for justice and for peace.
Every now and then, I guess we all think realistically about that day when we will be victimized with what is life's final common denominator. That's something we call death. We all think about it. And every now and then, I think about my own death. And I think about my own funeral. But I don't think of it in a morbid sense. And every now and then, I ask myself, what is it that I would like said? So I leave the word to you this evening. If any of you are sound when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you do get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. Tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to say that on that day, I did try to be right on the war question. I want you to say that on that day in my life, that I did try to see those who were in prison. I want you to say that day that I did try to love and serve humanity. And yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. Say that I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. See, I won't have any money to leave behind. And I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. See, I just want to leave a committed life behind. That is all I want you to say. Because I've been to the mountaintops. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. Because I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go to the mountaintops. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. Now, I may not get there with you. But I want you to know this evening that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Thank you.
I think we'll be in good hands in the next generation here. One of the people that Erica Gordon Taylor mentioned was Alan Blueford. Alan Blueford was an Oakland high school student who was murdered by the Oakland police just weeks before his high school graduation. Please welcome his parents, Adam and Geraldine Blueford.
Good evening, people.
My name is Adam Dwayne Blueford. I'm here today to speak on behalf of my son, who was murdered by Oakland Police Department May the 6th of this year. My son went to his prom a week before this incident. He was to graduate 2 weeks after. It's just a terrible incident. The police department has bagged their police after lying, saying my son was in a gun exchange and a bunch of more stuff. This case is still being litigated, so I can't get into real fine details, but my son was murdered. The initial story was that my son was in a gun exchange of gunfire with the police department. This story went on for 3 days. Come to find out that wasn't true. The police officer actually shot himself, and I don't know if he knew it or not, but he shot himself. My son never fired a weapon. My son never had a weapon. So it's just so much going on in this case, and it's still fresh, you know. We still mourning from this. But we're gonna fight for my son to the day I die. Thank you. My son Alan was a great young man, very respectful. Had friends of all races. Just a terrible thing. I'm gonna let my wife speak now. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank ISO for this wonderful conference, for all your solidarity, for all your love and all your support. Because this is what we need for change. This is what justice looks like. Standing together, people with all races, all different colors. I would like everyone here that is fighting for all of our families standing with us to grab a flyer in the back. It's Justice for Alan Blueford. It's acronyms, it's JAB, because we're going to jab the hell out of the police. We're going to stick and move. We're going to suck their ass all the way. Now, I got a few things to say about the police. And I know growing up I was taught that the police oath is to protect and serve. Oh. So I looked up what the definition of protect means. And to protect is the products against any kind of damage, attack, or injury. The police murdered my son. So they didn't protect him. To serve is to perform duties or service for another person or organization. They didn't serve him. They stood over him, shot him 3 times, left him in the street to die, didn't identify him, didn't call his parents, left us in the lobby of the Oakland Police Department for 2.5 hours before they could give us any answers. And we went to every agency. We went to the city council. We went to the city mayor. We went to the Oakland police chief. We met with all the heads of the departments. We met with the assistant police chief. We met with the city attorney. They are still hiding evidence. They're still telling lies. They still won't give us our coroner's reports. They're still going around saying, it's under investigation. We're very sorry. They're not sorry. They don't care about Alan. They don't care about us. They don't care about these families that are broken. They don't care about our tears. They don't care about our void in our life. All they did was rob us from our son. They took his life. They left him cold. They left us just grieving and sad for the rest of our life. And this is what Alan Blueford looks like. This is what Alan Blueford looks like. We're going to stand up and fight. We're going to continue to get the word out. We're going to continue to reach everybody. We're going to take it all the way to Washington if we have to. This is not okay. This is not be tolerated. This will be justice for Alan. There'll be justice for Ramarley. There'll be justice for Emmett Till. There'll be justice for their sons from Stockton. There's going to be justice for them all. Because we're going to stand up. We're going to fight. We're going to take it to them. We're going to jab their ass. We're going to kick their ass so they can go on with that.
Goddamn right.
Alan Blueford, beloved son, beloved grandson, beloved brother, beloved uncle, beloved friend, beloved godson, and my 2-year-old granddaughter walks around the house and saying, jail the killer and cops now! 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 Thank you!
Not everybody can do this. Not everybody can endure that kind of pain and come out swinging. And I know that these families up here are speaking out in part because they don't want anyone to ever have to go through what they are going through right now. In 2010, 16-year-old young man named James Earl Rivera Jr. was murdered in cold blood by the Stockton police and sheriff. Please give a warm welcome to his parents, Dion Smith Downs and Carrie Downs.
Thank everybody for inviting us here. My name is Dion Smith Downs. I'm from Stockton, California, and this is my husband, Carrie Downs. My son, James Rivera, was murdered, and I changed the word murder to assassinated because they shot my son 48 times. He did not deserve that, and 19 of them hit his body. My son was only 16 years old. They murdered him a day before his 17th birthday. He did not deserve how they shot my son. He's loved. I'm a mother of 14. I love all my kids the same. And I want the world to know that James is being missed very much. I miss him cooking. I miss him picking up his sister and brothers from school. It's hard to be a 16 in America today. He did not deserve to be slaughtered like they did him. He didn't even get a chance to have a second chance. I'll never know what he could or could not be, and they took that from me. And I want the world to know my son was a nice kid. He was happy a kid. And I want the world to know that I am James Rivera. I am James Rivera. And what I did with my madness, I started organizing in Stockton, California. And so I want people to know, don't be ashamed. I know how it is to don't have insurance for your child. I know how it feels when your child been murdered by the police and people turn their heads. But I am different. I am a listening ear. And that's why I went in mobile to Stockton and Manteca and Modesto. You know, we all came together. We did a caravan of resistance. But we all came together. And I heard the mothers' cries. I went out there. And I just thank God for Oscar Grant. You know, they came. I was on the internet and I was seeing all the trials and tribulation they went. But you know what? They had faith in God and they stood up to the war. And I just want to be just like that. I want to be that soldier like Wanda Johnson. She's a soldier. And I want my husband to finish because I'm kind of emotional right now. But I just thank God I was invited here to be able to tell my story. And it's a long, long battle. Today I still ask for the coroner's report, his property, everything about my son. I got a word. And so we still marching and we still fighting. So if y'all can come out there, we got a change.org for James Rivera, sign that petition that I deserve justice. I need to know what happened that day to James Rivera.
Once again, my name is Kerry Downs, and I'm from Stockton, California, and I'm here to share the story about our son, James Rivera, Jr., who was killed by law enforcement. On July 22nd, 2010, officers used what they called a pit maneuver to push our son through not two metal mailboxes and then through two garages. These officers exited their vehicles and began shooting with no warning. They shot at our son, like she said, 48 times, 19 of those rounds entered our son's body. His body has holes in it the size of a golf ball. They are pretty graphic. There is no reason for this. This is insane, put it that way. This is insane. Officers, they stated that our son was backing up is why they shot him like that. In fact, the car was so embedded in the garage that when the tow truck came, it couldn't pull it out regularly like they pull a car regularly and then put it on the truck or whatever. They had to raise it in the air and then pull it out. Not only that, but it was two cars behind James when he was inside the garage. So where was he going? James was hurt and they ignored that and opened fire on our son. Murderers, that's just what they are. Words can't express the pain that we feel and that we're going through. We want people, reason why we show these people, because a lot of times when shootings occur, they have us segregated off where it's way over there, you can't see nothing but maybe some yellow tape, and that's about it, and the officers standing around. So you never really get to see the actual event of situation that happened with a shooting. So that's why it's pretty graphic, and some people say, why are we showing that? Because we want people to know that this is real. I'm gonna try to wrap it up because I don't have too much time, but we're in the fight, like she said, a long haul. This is a long haul fight, and we are not gonna give up, and we're gonna keep spreading the news, keep spreading awareness about police brutality. In closing, In closing, we would like to give special thanks to ISO Conference for inviting us to Chicago for the first time to share our story about our son, James Earl Rivera Jr. Also, much thanks to the Oscar Grant Committee and the People's Community Medics for their love and support. Special thanks to Jack for his unconditional love, support, and embracement. Also, I can't say enough on how much we appreciate Jeff Boyette for noticing that our son needed help to get his story out to the world. He is kind, thoughtful, and inspirational. Thank you, Jeff, for your one-of-a-kind ways. We also would like to thank Occupy Oakland, Occupy Stockton, Modesto Cop Watch for their motivation, for their standing strong against the injustice, not only in their cities, but other cities as well. Racism is real and does exist in many ways that affect people in general. Police brutality is real and it also exists, especially when the three officers, Eric Azarvan and Gregory Dunn, of the Stockton Police Department, and John Nesbitt of the San Joaquin Sheriff's Department, is given 3 days pay leave, while we, on the other hand, are making funeral arrangements to put our loved ones away. Not cool. In closing, we must not forget about the ones that can't speak for themselves. Alan Blueford, Ramarley Graham, Rakia Boy, I hope I pronounced that right, Oscar Grant Jr., Emmett Tibb, Ernest Duenes Jr., Kenneth Harding Jr., Luther Brown Jr., Antoine Davis, James Madavi, Cook, Sean Bell, Troy Davis, Debray Carpenter, also known as Fly Benzo, Raheem Brown, Rita Elias, Derek Jones, and many more. And last but not least, our son, James Rivera Jr. If I have left any names out, I mean no disrespect, but if I had to name all the names that we have to speak up for, I'd be here longer, way longer. In closing again, if we turn our heads and remain silent in this injustice about any and everything, we will remain the same. We will remain in the same situation. Power to the people.
I just want to make people aware that there is a petition online for James Earl Rivera Jr. You can grab this flyer, which I believe might be at the back of this room, or just go to change.org and search for James Rivera. And it's James Earl Rivera Jr. is the petition. Something is happening in New York City where goes beyond stop and frisk. Stop and frisk and chase. Stop and frisk and shoot. And all through just this calendar year, you almost can go every single month and count at least one body. But something else is happening. There is a family that has begun holding vigils every week. and their strength and their community and their solidarity and their organization has given strength and community and solidarity and organization to other families who've traveled to their home, to their vigils, and beginning to build a network of families who could hold on to each other and fight back together. I'm speaking, of course, for those who are in New York, you know Constance Malcolm and Frank Graham, the parents of Ramarley Graham. Please welcome them.
Just want to say good evening. Good evening. Thankful ISO to having us here. Lychee. Lee, I can't thank you enough. I want to start off by saying, when they say get back, what we do? Get back? That's what we plan to do. I want to start off by saying I'm Constance Malcolm. I'm a Ramarley Graham mom. Ramarley Graham was 18 years old. I can't go into too much with the case, but I'm pretty sure you have seen the internet and all the lies that started out at first. Ramarley was on his way home. The cops supposed to be had chasing him. They said they chased him. We know that it's a lie. The video clearly shows, for all that doesn't know, there was a video. Me, myself, forgot about the video. It was surveillance on the house. My son casually walked in the gate, took out his key, and opened the door and went inside. A couple minutes went by, about 3 to 4 minutes. You seen plainclothes cop running from the other direction. How are you supposed to be chasing somebody you come from the other direction? In hot pursuit. I don't understand hot pursuit, what that means. That's what they said. A couple minutes later, my son was dead in front of his grandmother and his 6-year-old brother. After all that was done, they took my mom to the precinct, held her there for 7 hours, questioning her, trying to put words in her mouth about her grandson. That wasn't the worst part. After all of that, we couldn't find my son's body for 4 days. We didn't know where his body was. And after we did find the body, they had him on the wrong name. That said and done, we had a small victory. The police was indicted with manslaughter 1 and manslaughter 2. We are not happy with those charges. My son was murdered. They charged manslaughter 1, manslaughter 2. That day after the arraignment, the cop came outside laughing, applauding, as if they did something good. You the man. What's so great about somebody that killed somebody's child? Unarmed, in their own home. I can't get how he's the man. How could he sleep at night? That's right. They say they're the New York finest. Yeah. They are no more nothing but a bully. The biggest gang members you could find. Ray Kelly, the police commissioner, yeah, he has to go. He has to go. He proved to us that when you have money, you can buy another term. Poor people doesn't count. That's why he has to go. He condoned police bad behavior. He's not telling them when they're wrong. And if you have any dignity at all, we all grew up when you do something wrong, you stand up and tell you do something wrong. That's right. They haven't done that yet. Richard Hayes put out, supposed to be confining one of his fellow officers a month later after Ramarley was killed, that he didn't want to kill Ramarley. A month later, yeah. How much sorry you could be a month later? He also said in court, his lawyer, that he thought he was in danger. My bathroom is not much bigger than here, where I'm standing. He said he thought Ramarley had a gun. At the end of the day, he shot my son in his body one time, and he still haven't found a gun. They said they saw a butt of a gun. Where's the gun? Thank God my mom was in the house, because we would know what would have happened. I wouldn't be here. It would have been an open and closed case. They would have planted whatever they want to plant. They had my house shut down for 2 days. Never even asked me, do I have somewhere to go? They just told me I couldn't come in my house. Police Commissioner Kelly came out and said it was a struggle. A day later, he came back and said it wasn't no struggle. Kelly, that means your people are lying to you. They don't respect you. And if they could lie to him, who are we, the public? But like I said, we are no longer asking for justice. We are demanding justice. I'm going to turn over the microphone to Frank so he can speak a little bit about Ramarley.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the members of ISO for inviting us here to Chicago. This is our first time here in Chicago, and such a sad occasion. I want to thank a few people. Lychee, Lee, Carlene, Charmaine. These are the people that help us weekly. Also, there's some more members here sitting right beside them who's always giving us word of encouragement. Come to the vigil, march with us. Ramarley was 18 years old. He's the youngest of 5 boys. He was born February. I'm mixing my birthday. That's how confused I am right now. He was born April 12, 1993. He was killed on February 2nd, 10 days before my birthday. He was a loving kid. He's about 5'7", but still of the mentality or the heart like a baby. Loving boy, kisses you when he meets you, hug you, would take you. He would just see you coming from the store and take your bag. If you pass him 6 times a day, he'd tell you hello. Kind. He'll give you the last dollar in his pocket. I keep asking why, knowing I won't get the answers, because those animals that kill him will never give us the answers. I know they won't. So when I ask why, I think I ask God. I'm not asking a member of the NYPD. I don't think they're capable of giving an honest answer. They destroy my family in more than one ways. 2 grandmothers left without a grandson. 5 boys are left without a brother, and 2 girls are left without a brother. My granddaughter wakes up every day and calls his name, Ramarley. Ramarley's sleeping. It's just been so hard. Ramarley got murdered on the 2nd of February. Since then, there's been 2 more African Americans killed in Brooklyn. One, they used the car and hit this man and said he ran into the car. And about 3 weeks ago, a 23-year-old young lady was shot point blank in her chest by plainclothes cops in Brooklyn. And these 2 people is from Brooklyn. When we do our rally, we do it and hope we could make a change, stop them from doing this. And we are hoping and praying, and we're not going to give up. And I'm asking everyone here tonight, when you go back home, tell your friend, tell your neighbors. If you're a teacher, tell your student. Tell someone to join the movement against this racist police system. We don't want to have to be doing this on a monthly basis, but so far, that is what has been happening. We're not going to stop. The vigil that we're doing finishes 3 weeks, July 19th, but we are ready to start planning stage 2. We want change, and we want it now. We're not waiting. Ramarley can't speak, so I figure I'll do the speaking for him. We do the speaking for him, because he lived within us. We visit the cemetery every week, and we talk to him just like he was sitting right here. We tell him what we're doing, and we ask him to watch over us. And we ask him to help, do whatever he can in his power, because he has power to save other people, other kids, look over his family. I love him so much, and sometimes I don't know where I get the strength from. How do I go on? I really don't know. How am I living today? Because I never thought I'd have to live without him. And it's so hard. And once again, I want to thank all of you. As I said, keep the fight up. We petition we're signing, and the next court date for this police officer is September 13th in New York City in the Bronx. It's a while from now, but if you can, we would like that courtroom to be crowded. Again, thank yourself for coming out. Thank you for listening to us and having us here. This is our first time, but I could promise you this, it won't be a last. Thank you. Thank you.
Please now welcome Kienga Yamada-Taylor. She is a columnist with the Socialist Worker and on the editorial board of the International Socialist Review, where she writes about race and class in the United States.
The families here have gone out of their way to thank us for inviting them. I think that clearly we thank them for coming. All of us are honored to be in the presence of people who are standing up and fighting against these injustices and who are really survivors of police and racial terrorism that is happening across this country. The word terrorism should not be thrown around lightly in this day and age, but there is really no other way to describe what is happening to young African American men and women in cities across this country. From the daily humiliation of encounters with the police, whether it's called stop and frisk in New York City, or assume the position in Chicago, or up against the wall in Oakland, the message is the same. We are the police, and you have no rights in this society that we are bound to respect. And the police are just the first point of contact for millions of African Americans in their engagement with a vicious and racist criminal justice system that is literally destroying Black communities across this country. Mass incarceration for minor drug offenses is destroying opportunities for work, for school, for housing, and for any meaningful participation in life in this country. Our people are being demonized and dehumanized in such a way that the very desire to be alive is taken away from millions of young Black men in this country. For all that we hear about Black men, the descriptions, the characters of thugs, of hard life, we never hear about the trauma, the pain, the humiliation, the suffering, the stress, the depression of what it must be like to be considered less than human by the society into which you were born. We never hear, for example, that for young Black men aged 15 to 24, that suicide is the third leading cause of death. We never hear that for young Black men aged 25 to 34, that suicide is the fifth leading cause of death. And this is what the real dehumanization looks like. It does not only impact those who get caught in the racist snare of the criminal justice system, but in a society at large, Black skin alone marks you for suspicion, for hatred, for criminality, and even death. The lynching of Trayvon Martin exposed this for the world to see, but there are other cases that people haven't heard about, such as the case of 13-year-old Darius Simmons of Milwaukee, who was only doing what his mother asked when she told him to take the garbage out. And he took the garbage out to the corner, and he was confronted by a 75-year-old white man named John Spooner. Spooner assumed that Darius was responsible for a theft in his house. He pulled out a gun. Darius raised his arms in the air, and with Darius's mother looking on from feet away, Spooner pulled the trigger once, hitting Darius in the chest. And when Darius ran away, he shot him again. When the police came, Spooner immediately admitted to shooting the boy. But then they proceeded to detain his mother for 2 hours while her child was dying. They then went and searched Darius's house for stolen items or anything else that they could find to justify what had just happened. And when they couldn't find anything, they arrested Darius's brother for truancy. I defy anyone to be able to imagine anything like this happening to a white family in this country. And this is the face of police terror in our neighborhoods. Your child is killed, and you are the one who is questioned. Your child is killed, and it's your family member who is locked up. So the next time you hear some lying, parasitic politician telling you all the reasons why we need to spend $2 or $3 billion a week for a so-called war on terror in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, or Iran, or somewhere else in the Middle East, tell them that before another penny is spent for another American war waged halfway around the world to end terrorism, there needs to be a war waged on the racial terrorism taking place in every black community around this country. Never called us nigger, but the NYPD did. No Pakistani ever called us nigger, but the Chicago Police Department did. No Iranian ever called us nigger, but the Oakland Police Department did. The Stockton Police Department did. And we have to stand up to this. Despite this obvious racism, the obvious racism at the core of the new Jim Crow and the police terrorism in our communities, in the United States, the people who run this country still deny that racism is a problem. We are told that the disparities that exist between black and white in this country are because of personal failure. The problem is not the racist criminal justice system, it's black people committing crime. The problem is not our shattered public school system that has been starved of funding. It's the teachers, it's the students, it's the parents who are the problem. The problem is not the system, that the system does not create jobs with living wages. The problem is people are lazy and don't want to work. And so the message is very simple. You don't need to change the system, you need to change yourself. And when you blame those who are victimized by the system of inequality, it lets the system off the hook. But we want accountability from this system now. We are tired of racist police who kill our people and get away with it. We are tired of racist prosecutors who don't charge these racist cops for the crimes that they are committing. And we are tired of hearing about bad cops being bad apples, because we know that they are all complicit in the terrorism that is taking place in our communities. Tired of fighting the same battles that our people waged against police, racism, and corruption 40 years ago. Why is it that 40 years after the black freedom struggle of the 1960s, when racism apparently was taken off the books and taken out of the law in the United States, that it still persists in this country? Why is it that the United States isn't colorblind and never will be? And it's actually, I thought of an analogy for this. I mentioned it on Facebook, so. It's like baking a cake. You put the sugar, the butter, the eggs and flour, you make the batter, you bake the cake. It comes out, it's perfect, but all of a sudden you decide you're gonna go on a diet, and now you want a sugar-free cake. Well, as much as you'd like, you can't just pull the sugar out of the cake. It's baked in there for good. And you come to realize that if you want a sugar-free cake, you're going to have to start over and make a new cake. Racism is the sugar in this United States cake. And after being baked for more than 300 years, they can't just randomly declare that the cake is now sugar-free. Why? committed genocide against the indigenous native population in the name of white supremacy. This is the country that built its entire wealth on the backs of African slaves. This is the country that initiated a war against Mexico, stole half of its land under the pretext of white supremacy and manifest destiny, and now talks about border problems. This is the country that passed the Chinese Exclusion Act to prevent Chinese immigrants from coming into the U.S. This is the country that gave the world a eugenics movement. What is eugenics? It's the fake science based on the idea that colored people are biologically inferior to white people. It was the basis for the sterilization campaigns against black and Puerto Rican women throughout the 20th century. This is the country that the Nazis came to in 1933 to perfect their racist science. This is the country that put 110 Japanese and Japanese Americans in concentration camps. This is the country that white nationalists from South Africa came to figure out how to translate Jim Crow into apartheid. This is the country that didn't allow black people in the South to vote until 1965, that didn't end Jim Crow till 1964. So racism always matters in the United States. It is part of its lifeblood, even with a black president sitting in the White House. But we also have to keep in mind that despite the history of racism and oppression at the hands of the government itself, that racism in this country also has never just been about racism unto itself. When the Occupy movement had turned this notion of the basic divide in American society into common sense, the 1% versus the 99%, we must begin to ask ourselves, how does this tiny 1% maintain its power over the rest of us for such a long time? Racism is a key part of their strategy because there aren't enough of them to fight the majority of us, so they get us to fight each other. It's an old concept: divide and rule, divide and conquer. The blacks are the criminals, the Muslims are the terrorists, and the Mexicans and anyone who looks like them are illegal. And despite these active efforts to divide our side, their side also simultaneously creates new opportunities for solidarity to be built amongst us. While the police and the criminal justice system in general have honed their tactics of racial profiling, police harassment, and intimidation in black neighborhoods, they are also able to use those skills in other communities. Stop and frisk is primarily used to attack and control black and Latino communities, but we also know that at the same time, the NYPD has created a wide-ranging network of surveillance and spying used to harass Muslim and Arab communities in New York City and beyond. We know that in the states of Alabama and Arizona, Jim Crow has given way to Juan Crow, as the racial profiling of brown-skinned people has now been sanctioned by the U.S. Supreme Court last week. And we also saw with the Occupy movement that when the power structure is threatened, they will unleash hell on anyone who gets in its way. So predominantly white protesters were brutally suppressed and beaten by local, state, and federal officials, because their collective fear is that the struggles against economic injustice will come together with the struggles against racial injustice to create a new social movement that demands real change, not hollow cries for hope that primarily ask us to put our fate in the hands of parties or politicians who either stand on the sideline or join in the bashing of our communities and the destruction of our public schools, the thievery of our homes through foreclosure, the theft of our pensions, the theft of our health care, and the theft of our very futures. They don't do anything to stop it. They join into doing it. So solidarity and the idea that an injury to one is an injury to all comes by championing the struggles of the most oppressed among us. So in our fights for jobs, education, healthcare, and housing, we must also demand an immediate end to stop and frisk in New York and beyond. We demand an end to the way in which police brutalize people in our communities. We demand an end to the criminalization of young black people in this country. We demand an end to their imprisonment, to the destruction of their futures. We demand an end to the racist new Jim Crow system. And to that end, I want to close with a quote from a revolutionary who was jailed in the early part of the 20th century for his efforts to call out American hypocrisy and to fight for a different world then. Eugene Debs, a revolutionary in the American Socialist Party, when he was being sentenced to prison for the act of sedition in 1918, said to the judge this, and I quote, "Your Honor, years ago I recognized my kinship with all living beings, and I made up my mind that I was not one bit better than the meanest on earth. I said then, and I say now, that while there is a lower class, I am in it. And while there is a criminal element, I am of it. And while there is a soul in prison, I am not free. Your Honor, I have stated in this court that I am opposed to the social system in which we live, that I believe in a fundamental change. I am opposing a social order in which it is possible for one man who does absolutely nothing that is useful to amass a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars, while millions of men and women who work all the days of their lives secure barely enough for a wretched existence. I see the dawn of the better day for humanity. The people are awakening. In due time, they will and must come to their own. Let the people everywhere take heart of hope, for the cross is bending, the midnight is passing, and joy cometh with the morning." Thank you.
All right. Wow. Let's give one last round of applause to this panel.